dreams, secrets, and confrontations. Apart from the Hunt sisters and Sunny, Mrs. Stone had also prepared a gift for Zachary. Although he couldn't become her son-in-law, being her niece's husband still made him part of the family. Feeling more generous, Mrs. Stone arranged a gift for Zachary too. As Elisa came down the stairs dragging her luggage, Mrs. Stone signaled for the butler to leave. She greeted her daughter with a smile, asking why she took so long to pack. Elisa explained that she wanted to make sure she had everything she needed. Wondering about the rest of the family, Elisa learned they hadn't come down yet. Elisa mentioned that Liberty didn't want to join them, expressing her sadness at being away from Sunny for so long. She remarked that Sunny would be 3 years old when they returned. Mrs. Stone reminded Elisa that she would turn 27 soon, and Elisa responded by saying she wasn't in a rush to get married. She had high standards and wouldn't settle for just anyone. Mrs. Stone suggested that as long as the person was kind, their family background need not be as prestigious as theirs. Elisa worried about potential in-laws taking advantage of her if their status wasn't equal. Elisa's options for suitable suitors in Wilkespoon were limited, and she wasn't interested in younger men. The only family with suitable sons was the Yorks, but they wouldn't choose her due to her past pursuit of Zachary. As a result, Mrs. Stone couldn't bear the thought of her daughter marrying someone from far away. Elisa expressed her desire to meet Serenity's husband but realized it might not be possible during their family trip. Mrs. Stone suggested that Elisa stay home and meet Serenity's husband later, but Elisa preferred going on the trip to take her mind off Zachary. Meanwhile, Serenity texted Zachary upon reaching her neighborhood, and he was waiting downstairs with Jim to greet her. Zachary tried to help Serenity out of the car, but she playfully rejected his assistance, emphasizing that she wasn't disabled or old. He teasingly remarked on her reaction but still ended up carrying her out of the car, causing Serenity to blush. Serenity found herself feeling a bit embarrassed by Zachary's romantic gesture, especially when he carried her in his arms. His familiar scent made her touch his face affectionately, which made Zachary momentarily speechless. He had to stop his train of thought from going too far and continued with their interactions. After placing Serenity back on the ground, Zachary proceeded to carry Sunny out of the car. The little boy was excited to see him, and they shared a joyful moment together. Once Liberty joined them, they exchanged greetings with Jim as well. Serenity asked if they were not going home for the holidays, and Jim explained that it was expensive to travel, so he planned to transfer money to his parents instead. After helping Serenity move her belongings to Zachary's car, Jim mentioned that Mr. York had asked him to assist with the move, as they would be returning to their old residence for New Year's. Serenity had no objections, and Jim quickly completed the task. As a gesture of thanks, Zachary gave Jim a $100 bill for his help. Jim appreciated the payment and assured them that he could help with anything in the future if they needed, as long as he was paid for it. He humorously added that he would try to get more business in the neighborhood to earn some extra money for the new year. With that, Jim departed without any apparent concerns. After Jim had left, Zachary received a call from Serenity, indicating they needed Jim's assistance once again. This time, they had to move some belongings to the 8th floor. Serenity looked at the multitude of gifts her aunt had sent over, realizing that even if half of them belonged to her sister, it would still be an arduous task for Jim to handle alone. Zachary asked Serenity how much they should pay Jim for his moving services, seeking her input on the matter. Pausing for a moment to assess the situation, Serenity suggested, "Why don't we ask Jim to come back first and take a look? He can name a price, and then we can decide if it's fair." Zachary agreed, trusting Serenity's judgment in dealing with Jim, who had proven to be honest and trustworthy in their previous interactions. He promptly called Jim and asked him to return to the apartment. Half an hour later, Jim cheerfully arrived, ready to help with the move once more. Serenity thanked him for his assistance, remarking that without him, she would have been exhausted after carrying all those items upstairs. Jim grinned and modestly replied, "It's my pleasure to help you both. I'm always here if you need anything, and my rates are reasonable." With the moving fee settled, Jim efficiently moved all the gifts from Mrs. Stone into Serenity's place. He then helped Liberty and Sunny carry their portion of gifts up to their apartment. Zachary had already taken care of the moving fee in advance, leaving Jim content with the additional allowance he had earned recently. Zachary returned from assisting Jim and entered the living room. He informed Serenity, "I haven't eaten yet." Noticing the gifts her aunt had sent over were still in the process of being organized, Serenity replied, "I haven't had a chance to eat either. I spent hours at the supermarket." "I'm glad you're back, otherwise, it would have been quite tiring to move everything upstairs on my own." Zachary recognized the truth in her words. Indeed, if he hadn't returned, Serenity might not have thought of asking Jim for help in the first place. "If you need any assistance in the future, don't hesitate to let Jim know. He's reliable and charges reasonably for his services," Serenity said appreciatively. Zachary, standing by his wife's side, couldn't help but smile at her thoughtfulness. "You take such good care of me," he remarked warmly. Serenity chuckled, responding playfully, "Of course. I buy you some new clothes every time I go shopping with my sister, or else she'll nag me. She thinks you're more favored than her own sister." Zachary was filled with gratitude for his wife's care and affection. He leaned down, and his handsome face drew near hers, planting a gentle kiss on her lips. Serenity pushed him away slightly, teasingly admonishing, "Be serious, don't just kiss me without warning." However, she couldn't resist the magnetic pull of his lips and pulled him back for another fervent kiss, their passion intensifying. Their love and longing for each other, strengthened by their time apart, ignited an even deeper connection between them. They moved to the bedroom, where their passion and desire reached new heights in a frenzy of reunion. After the passionate encounter, Zachary emerged from the room with a blissful expression on his face. He headed to the kitchen, humming a tune, to prepare a sumptuous dinner for his beloved wife, grateful for her love and understanding. After spending 2 hours preparing dinner, Zachary looked at the table filled with Serenity's favorite dishes that he had personally cooked. Feeling playful, he decided to capture the moment and posted a photo of the spread on his social media. It had been a while since he had been active on social media. The photo quickly garnered attention from his friends and important clients, who liked the post and left enthusiastic comments praising his culinary skills. Unaware of the response on his social media, Zachary returned to the bedroom, where Serenity had just finished bathing. She expressed some discontent, feeling that the situation was unfair. Zachary playfully teased her, promising they could practice more together to improve her stamina, to which she playfully pinched him in response. Zachary exaggeratedly acted hurt and called it an attempted mariticide, eliciting a smile from Serenity. They bantered affectionately, with Serenity noting how sweet and expressive he had become compared to their earlier days together. Zachary attributed the change to their relationship transitioning from a marriage of convenience to a genuine marriage. Once he finished drying her hair, Zachary confirmed that dinner was ready, and he had prepared all her favorite dishes. Serenity's heart warmed at his gesture, realizing the depth of his love for her. She reflected on her own feelings, realizing that her love might not have matched his in intensity. Determined to make it up to him, she resolved to express her love more openly in the future. Upon reaching the dining table a few minutes later, Serenity praised Zachary's cooking skills and playfully suggested posting photos of the dishes on her social media to tempt everyone. Zachary watched her with fondness as she snapped pictures and posted them along with a caption praising his culinary talent. Meanwhile, Jasmine, who was on a dinner date with Josh, saw Serenity's post and showed it to him. Seeing the public display of affection from the couple, Josh was momentarily speechless. He expressed surprise at discovering Zachary's multifaceted talents and admired his devotion to his wife. Jasmine admitted feeling envious of Serenity's happiness in such a loving relationship. Jasmine's remark about Serenity's husband's cooking skills made Josh feel immense pressure. He lacks culinary talent, but he believed he would treat his future wife well and make her happy. Jasmine, however, cautioned that love and marriage were different, and true compatibility required tolerance and understanding. Josh wondered if Jasmine expected her partner to excel in both cooking and housework, as was the traditional expectation for wives. He mentioned that his family had a talented chef, which led Jasmine to clarify that she didn't necessarily require her future partner to be skilled in those areas. She believed in equality in relationships and wouldn't tolerate chauvinistic ideals. Realizing that he had spoken as if they're already in a relationship, Josh decided to step outside to buy flowers. When he returned, he handed Jasmine a bouquet of roses and expressed his growing affection for her, asking if she would be his girlfriend. Jasmine accepted the flowers but suggested they continue eating first. She felt that they needed more time to get to know each other before defining their relationship. While Josh had left a good impression on Jasmine compared to her past blind dates, she didn't feel comfortable accepting his proposal immediately. She wanted to take things slowly and ensure they knew each other well enough before committing to a relationship. Despite liking Josh, she didn't want to rush into anything, feeling that it would be unfair to both of them. Josh had an extensive understanding of Jasmine's family history, dating back 18 generations, even knowing about the siblings who didn't survive infancy. Jasmine, on the other hand, was unaware of these details and only knew about her father's 4 siblings. When Josh mentioned that her father had 8 siblings but only 5 survived, Jasmine was taken aback and later confirmed this with her grandmother. This revelation made Jasmine realize the power and influence of the Buchan family, which frightened her. While she liked Josh, she hesitated to accept his advances immediately, wanting to know him better before committing to a relationship. She expressed her concerns to Josh, explaining that the Buchans were known for their ability to uncover everything about others, leaving no secrets. She hoped that Josh could interact with her without relying on his family's influence, allowing her some privacy. Josh had indeed researched Jasmine thoroughly before their blind date, wanting to get to know her better. However, his knowledge of her family's history and their abilities unintentionally made Jasmine uncomfortable. While he had genuine feelings for her, his tendency to reveal information unknowingly might have contributed to her reluctance to be his girlfriend. Despite understanding Jasmine's perspective, Josh couldn't help but feel disappointed. He's willing to wait for her, hoping she would see him as a person, not just a member of the influential family. Although Jasmine had feelings for him, her concerns about the family's power made her cautious about starting a relationship. While Josh's attempt at proposing to Jasmine didn't go as planned, Zachary and Serenity were relishing their honeymoon phase, enjoying a blissful time together. Serenity sat on the sofa, watching TV, while Zachary washed the dishes in the kitchen. She felt fulfilled and content with this life. Curious about TV dramas, Serenity expressed her disinterest in the modern ones, finding the special effects overwhelming. Zachary playfully called her young for labeling herself as old already and noted that she didn't have much time to follow dramas due to her busy schedule. Serenity then brought up Zachary's mother's suggestion that she take etiquette classes. Worried that his mother might not be satisfied with her behavior, Serenity asked if it was necessary. Zachary assured her that his mother was pleased with her and even liked her a lot. He had realized that he loved her just the way she was and had given up trying to change her, embracing her unique personality instead. While Serenity was open to taking etiquette lessons, she felt it would be challenging to find time amidst her online orders. Zachary suggested she could reduce her workload to accommodate the classes, showing his support for her improvement, but also respecting her decisions. Serenity wondered if he wanted her to take the classes, and he gently implied that he did, appreciating her willingness to grow and develop, but ultimately leaving the decision up to her. Zachary finished cleaning the stove, carefully wiping away any stains. He then washed his hands and walked over to Serenity, who was standing by the doorway, gazing at him with affectionate eyes. With a playful smile, he cradled her face gently, pinching her cheek slightly a few times. "I told you, you should go for those etiquette classes only if you truly want to. If not, I won't mind at all. Your conduct and manners are already wonderful in my eyes." Serenity held his hand and guided him to the balcony, where they sat on the swing together, enveloped by the enchanting city lights. She leaned against his shoulder, and they enjoyed the moment of warmth and intimacy. "You know," Serenity began, looking out at the illuminated houses, "when all those lights are on, that massive building across from us goes all dark. It seems everyone has gone home for the new year." Zachary smiled, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, leaning against each other. "Yes, tomorrow morning, we'll be heading back to the old residence. Nana has already arranged a room for us there." Curious about his family's ancestral home, Serenity asked, "How big is the old family residence?" Zachary chuckled, "Our ancestors started their business in the 1900s and made a small fortune. So, the old residence is quite extensive. It used to be considered luxurious back then. Each family unit has its own wing, though everything is connected. We all enter through the main entrance." "Wow, it sounds like a mansion," Serenity commented, intrigued by the history of Zachary's family. "Yes, it does resemble one," Zachary confirmed. "My mother enjoys living there because of the nostalgia. She has many memories associated with that place. And, of course, it's well maintained despite its age." Serenity understood that maintaining the ancestral residence was more about preserving memories than financial constraints. "Your family must treasure tradition and history." Zachary nodded, "Yes, we do. Nana, in particular, loves the old residence. She moved straight there after marrying into the York family and cherishes every moment spent there." Serenity smiled, appreciating the sentimentality of the older generation. The older generation often values the past and holds dear the places they once called home. "Exactly," Zachary agreed, chuckling softly. "Nana even returned home early after staying with us for a few days. She's still getting used to our place. You know how it is, everyone prefers their own shack over someone else's mansion." Serenity giggled, imagining Nana's cute antics. "That's true. Familiarity makes a place feel like home." "Absolutely," Zachary said, looking fondly at Serenity. "So, are you excited about going back to the old residence?" Serenity nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Yes, I am. It will be an adventure to explore your family's history and tradition." Zachary smiled warmly, "I'll be there with you, every step of the way." Serenity's eyes twinkled with gratitude as she held his hand. "Zachary, I was wondering if we could do something different tonight." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" "I'd like us to go for a walk, hand in hand, on the streets. You know, like any other couple does during the holidays. Most people have gone home, so the streets should be quieter and less crowded. It'll be a peaceful and romantic experience." Zachary's eyes softened with affection, and he squeezed her hand. "I'd love that, Seren. I've never done that before either. Let's go for a stroll and make some beautiful memories together." She smiled, feeling her heart flutter at his response. "Thank you, Zachary. You always understand what I need and support me." He kissed her forehead. "It's my pleasure, Seren. You mean the world to me, and I'll always be here for you." Serenity's heart swelled with love and gratitude for her caring and understanding husband. "I'll cherish every moment we spend together, Zachary." He grinned, "As will I, my love. Let me get you a jacket. It's getting chilly out there, and I want to keep my beautiful wife warm." Serenity blushed, feeling the warmth of his love enveloping her. As they prepared to go on their peaceful stroll, she couldn't help but feel lucky to have Zachary as her husband, always by her side, supporting and cherishing her every step of the way. Serenity nodded at Zachary's reminder and playfully remarked, "Yes, you better put on your jacket too. I don't want you to get sick and have to endure those daily jabs again." Zachary chuckled, "With you watching over me like this, I'll do my best to stay healthy. Those injections were enough to scare me for life." After retrieving Zach's jacket from the bedroom, they heard her phone ring. Although it wasn't Zachary's phone, he noticed Serenity's hesitation before answering the call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, may I know who this is?" Serenity asked cautiously. The voice on the other end identified itself, and Serenity's expression soured as she considered hanging up immediately. "Serenity, please don't hang up. I just want to talk to you for a bit. I won't disturb you or come to see you. I'm going mad without being able to see you," pleaded Lowe. He had been avoiding Serenity under the pressure exerted by his mother, Mrs. Lowe. But unable to bear the separation any longer, he had bribed a bodyguard to use his phone for this call. Without saying a word, Serenity ended the call abruptly. Curious about the caller, Zachary asked, "Who was that?" Serenity's expression remained troubled as she replied, "It was Lowe. He hasn't given up." Zachary frowned, aware of the ongoing conflicts between their corporations. The falling out between York Corporation and Lowe Enterprise had created significant pressure on Sean's father, Mr. Lowe. Feeling compelled to take action, Zachary invited Mr. Lowe for a meeting later that night. He intended to hint at the real reason behind the corporate conflict and attempt to mitigate the situation. He knew Lowe Enterprise was going through tough times. While he and Josh wanted to continue the conflict, Josh's romantic pursuit of Jasmine caused them to reconsider. Pushing Lowe Enterprise into bankruptcy would only lead to debts and unnecessary animosity. Zachary resolved to handle the situation delicately, ensuring that both families could coexist without causing further harm to each other. He knew that strategic and subtle maneuvers were essential to preserving their own interests while avoiding any unnecessary damage. Jasmine and Josh as a couple would probably be impossible then. For the sake of Josh's love, they would leave Lowe Enterprise with a way out. "He knows you're married, and that our relationship is stable, but he's still bugging you. You even told me you guys were like siblings. If I hadn't been jealous and made a fuss, you probably still wouldn't know right now that he had long had romantic feelings for you," Zachary cynically poked Serenity's forehead. Serenity touched the spot that had been poked and defended herself. "I've known him since I was young, and I watched him grow up. I always thought of him as my own little cousin. Who knew he would like me? That's not my fault. I never provoked him in any way. As she hugged Zachary's arm, they walked outside, and Serenity added playfully, "Doesn't him liking me prove that Nana has good taste and chose a good wife for you?" Zachary couldn't help but laugh. Right. Nana has good taste and chose a good wife for me. That's right. I'm your good wife. With that bad temper of yours, only I can tolerate it. Any other woman would have raised hell and given you the silent treatment to the end, Serenity teased. Zachary thought to himself that if it had been any other woman, he might not have gotten married. My beloved wife, you must continue to tolerate me then. We still have a long way to go in life. I think I could live to 100. You'll probably live to 95, so you'll have to keep tolerating me for another 70 years. Serenity looked at him, no longer leaning on him, and replied, "So you alone can live to 100, and there'll be a 5-year difference between our ages in the end?" "I'm older than you by 5 years. I'll be 100, you'll be 95. Alive, we'll be together, and even in death, we'll be together," Zachary said lovingly. Serenity was speechless. She thought he was being selfish, not considering the possibility of her living to 100 as well. Zachary then mentioned that he had only one admirer who had confessed to him before, and he naturally rejected her. He admitted that he had no idea if there were others since they never said anything. Serenity teased him, saying, "Is that admirer of yours still bugging you? I've never heard you mention it before." Zachary explained, "You've never asked. When it comes to this kind of thing, I won't say a word if you don't ask me lest you get jealous." "I wouldn't get jealous. I'm not like you. You're so narrow-minded and always randomly get jealous for no reason at all. Back then, you even stubbornly said you've never been jealous. That you didn't know what it felt like. Ha. You've got to eat your words now, and like you're full every day from the words you've eaten, and that's your own fault," Serenity playfully teased. Zachary showed his affection by lightly biting her cheek and admitting, "I was stubborn. I fell for you long ago but wouldn't admit it, and I was so jealous, but I wouldn't admit that either. Because of you, I've done so many things I've never done before, and I've done so many things that backfired on myself. I think I'm almost about to be burnt to a crisp from all that." Serenity found his awkwardness at the time amusing. Their relationship had grown over time, overcoming various crises through communication, misunderstandings, and giving each other silent treatment. Luckily, their marriage survived and flourished. Curious, Serenity asked, "Then, who's that admirer who confessed to you before?" Zachary replied calmly, "I don't remember anymore. She hasn't shown up before me lately." "You don't remember?" Serenity asked. "Do I have to? I don't like her, so what's the point of remembering? You're the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, so I only need to remember you. To me, all other women are just passers-by. I probably couldn't even remember what they looked like even if they stood in front of me," Zachary explained. He was naturally indifferent to other women and didn't pay much attention to them. Serenity laughed, saying, "I won't get mad, and I won't get jealous either. You don't have to be so defensive." "I'm really not being defensive. I'm telling the truth. Other than my relatives, you're the only one I care about. I don't care about anyone else," Zachary reaffirmed. "Then we're even. Lowe may admire me, but you have an admirer too," Serenity playfully remarked. Zachary thought of mentioning that Lowe was far less worthy than Elisa Stone, who had the resolution to give up when she said she would, but he decided to keep quiet. He understood that Lowe's feelings were likely genuine, as he had been infatuated with Serenity for many years, and it wasn't easy for him to give up so quickly. The couple continued to stroll along the streets, holding hands. Serenity's observation proved right, the streets were quieter than usual, with fewer people and cars. They engaged in conversation during their walk, with Serenity doing most of the talking while Zachary listened attentively. After more than an hour of walking, they returned home. While Serenity went to take a shower, Zachary sneaked out to the balcony to call Josh. He asked Josh to help him contact Mr. Lowe and arrange a meeting at the Wiltspoon Hotel for later. Josh inquired, "Didn't you say you were only going to meet him after New Year's? Did Sean Lowe bother your wifey again?" Zachary replied, "He called Serenity again tonight. She didn't talk to him and hung up immediately, but some people can be pretty stubborn. The more you ignore them, the more they bother you." Josh sighed, "How foolish can Sean Lowe be to try and take your woman? Fine, I'll help you contact Mr. Lowe and tell him to wait at Wiltspoon Hotel for you." "What time are you going over?" "I have to give Mr. Lowe a definite time," Zachary asked. "I'll go over when Saren falls asleep," Zachary replied confidently. Josh joked, "What if she doesn't fall asleep?" "I have my ways of making her fall asleep quickly," Zachary said with a hint of playfulness. Josh teased, "I used to think you didn't understand things like that, and I even wondered if I should bring you out to broaden your horizons, get some practice in, and accumulate some experience." Zachary got a little irritated and retorted, "Get lost." He hung up immediately, not wanting to entertain Josh's teasing any longer. Knowing that Serenity usually slept late, it was only a little past 9 in the evening. Even if she tried to sleep, she would toss and turn in bed and find it difficult to fall asleep. Zachary noticed this and asked jokingly, "Saren, are you trying to make a stir-fry?" Serenity sat up in bed and reached for her phone, deciding to watch a movie to pass the time. However, Zachary took her phone away and handed her a book instead, suggesting that reading might help her fall asleep. Looking at the book's title, Serenity blinked in surprise. It was a book she didn't expect to find in Zachary's possession. She flipped open the first page, but before she could read any further, Zachary snatched the book back with embarrassment. Amused by his reaction, Serenity teased, "Zachary, so this is the sort of person you are?" Zachary blushed, feeling a little embarrassed. The book had been a gift from Josh, and he had secretly read it when he developed feelings for Serenity. He never intended for her to find out about it. Returning to the room a few minutes later, empty-handed, Zachary couldn't bring himself to admit his true intentions behind the book. Serenity noticed the burning gaze in his eyes and decided to playfully feign sleep to avoid further conversation. Sensing her nervousness, Zachary assured her that he wouldn't touch her anymore that night and encouraged her to rest well for their upcoming trip. After some time, Serenity fell asleep, but her slumber was uneasy. She dreamt of having a wedding with Zachary, feeling overjoyed and happy. However, her newfound cousin, Elisa, suddenly appeared and accused Zachary of being a liar who had been deceiving her all along. Elisa urged Serenity not to marry him and to leave him immediately, claiming that he was untruthful and couldn't be trusted. Serenity woke up from her dream, feeling a bit disoriented. She questioned Zachary about whether he was a liar, but he didn't respond to her in the dream. After fully waking up, she realized Zachary wasn't in the room and concluded that he must have been up to something when he suggested she read a book before sleeping. Despite having a nightmare, she fell back asleep and slept soundly for the rest of the night. Meanwhile, at Wiltspoon Hotel, Mr. Lowe and his wife were waiting for Zachary's arrival. Josh had informed Mr. Lowe that Zachary would meet him there, and although they waited for 2 hours, Mr. Lowe remained patient, believing that Zachary would keep his word. Mr. Lowe expressed trust in Zachary's character, even though York Corporation had become a threat to his company. Mrs. Lowe was anxious and couldn't figure out how they might have offended Zachary in their business dealings. She suspected that someone might have turned him against them through malicious gossip. They briefly considered whether their son, Sean, could have done something to cause the issues with Zachary and the business relationship. Mrs. Lowe was frustrated with Sean's recent behavior, describing him as absent-minded and careless, and she worried that he might not be suitable to take over the company in the future. Mrs. Lowe felt pain to see her son struggling with unrequited love and behaving coldly towards her. She did not expect that her initial plan to make Sean give up on Serenity would result in such a significant negative impact on him. Serenity confronted Zachary in her dream, asking if he was a liar, but he remained silent, leaving her feeling perplexed and anxious. Upon waking, she realized it was just a dream and found Zachary was no longer beside her. She suspected he had orchestrated something to prompt her nightmare and decided to go back to sleep. In the real world, Mr. Lowe waited patiently at Wilkespoon Hotel after receiving a call from Josh, informing him of Zachary's willingness to meet. Despite waiting for 2 hours with no sign of Zachary, Mr. Lowe remained calm and hopeful. His wife, Mrs. Lowe, anxiously wondered if they had offended Zachary, but they couldn't pinpoint any actions that might have caused the rift. Mrs. Lowe even considered the possibility of someone slandering them in front of Zachary, leading to the cessation of cooperation between their companies. She also pondered if their son, Sean, might have done something to affect the situation. Mr. Lowe expressed concern about Sean's recent behavior, describing him as absent-minded and careless, which could impact his future prospects in taking over Lowe Enterprise. Mrs. Lowe felt distressed seeing her son in such a lovelorn state, as he seemed to have withdrawn into himself. As they waited for Zachary, they discussed the importance of Sean's performance and the future of their family business. Despite the tension surrounding their companies, Mr. Lowe still had faith in Zachary's character and integrity. However, he couldn't fathom what might have led to the conflict between their companies. Meanwhile, Serenity peacefully slept at home, unaware of the discussions taking place about her husband and the business matters. As the night wore on, Serenity's dreamless sleep continued, and the events at Wilkespoon Hotel unfolded, waiting for Zachary's arrival to hopefully resolve the misunderstandings between them. Despite Mrs. Lowe's efforts to control her son and make him give up on Serenity, she knew that with time, he would eventually move on from his infatuation. She hadn't told her husband, Mr. Lowe, about their son's feelings for Serenity, but now she felt it was time to share the truth. When Mrs. Lowe revealed that Sean liked Serenity, Mr. Lowe initially thought it was normal for his adult son to have a crush. However, when he realized Serenity was Jasmine's best friend, he was taken aback and joked that Sean hadn't fallen for his own cousin. Mrs. Lowe explained that Serenity was already married and not interested in Sean romantically. Despite Mrs. Lowe's attempts to dissuade him, Sean persisted, and she had to use their connections to threaten him to leave Serenity alone. Mrs. Lowe felt frustrated that Sean was fixated on Serenity, seeing her as the obstacle to his happiness. At that moment, Zachary entered the scene, emanating an aura of royalty, leaving Mr. and Mrs. Lowe in awe of his presence. They greeted him politely, but Zachary seemed indifferent and walked past them, instructing them to follow him. They complied, but due to the intimidating presence of his bodyguards, they felt nervous and uncertain about the meeting's purpose. As they trailed behind Zachary, Mrs. Lowe couldn't shake off the feeling of impending doom. She sensed that Zachary's expression was serious and feared the consequences of their meeting. The Lowes could only follow cautiously, unaware of what fate awaited them in the hands of the enigmatic Zachary York. Zachary made his way to his suite on the top floor of the Wiltspoon Hotel. After a few minutes, the Lowe couple, led by Zachary's bodyguards, knocked on the door and entered. They thanked Zachary and nervously took a seat, unsure of the purpose of the meeting. Zachary didn't waste any time and got straight to the point. He told Mr. Lowe that he wanted his son, Sean Lowe, to stop bothering his wife. Both Mr. and Mrs. Lowe were taken aback and denied that their son would ever dare to pursue Zachary's wife. They also inquired about the identity of Zachary's wife, as they were unaware of her status. Zachary saw no reason to hide the truth any longer and confirmed that his wife was Serenity, whom Mrs. Lowe was familiar with. Mrs. Lowe was shocked to learn that Serenity was Zachary's wife, while Mr. Lowe realized the reason behind York Corporation's abrupt termination of cooperation with Lowe Enterprise. Mrs. Lowe was relieved that she had only threatened Sean to keep him away from Serenity and hadn't taken any further actions to force them to leave Wiltspoon. She was grateful to her niece for informing her about Sean's feelings, as it allowed her to intervene and protect her son from potential consequences. Understanding the situation, Mr. and Mrs. Lowe promised to supervise their son better and ensure he wouldn't bother Serenity again. They were relieved to have discovered the truth before any irreversible damage occurred, and they were grateful to Zachary for enlightening them on the matter. Mr. York, it's been a while since Sean went to see Serenity, Mrs. Lowe explained. I didn't know she was your wife, but I did know she got married a few months ago. I knew it was wrong for him to bother her, so I forced him to stop going to her bookshop and calling her. Zachary sternly responded, earlier, your son used a new phone number to call my wife again. Despite knowing Serenity for over a decade and having feelings for her, she chose me as her husband. I will not tolerate anyone pestering her, especially after she has rejected him multiple times. I trust Serenity, but I cannot let Sean continue bothering her. Mr. Lowe quickly assured, Mr. York, I'll discipline Sean strictly when we get back. I promise he won't bother your wife anymore. If he knew Serenity was your wife, he wouldn't dare to bother her. Zachary clarified, Saren and I have been married for 3 months, and Sean found out about it long ago. He confessed his feelings after she got married, which was a mistake. The fact that she's my wife doesn't excuse his actions. He should respect her marriage regardless. Realizing their son's mistake, the Lowes apologized to Zachary and understood the situation. They left to address the matter with Sean. Once back home, Zachary found Serenity sleeping soundly. He lovingly watched her drifting off to sleep with her in his arms, feeling content and protective. Meanwhile, the Lowes were furious when they discovered that Sean had gotten a new phone number to contact Serenity. They confronted him about his inappropriate behavior, but was too drunk to respond. In his intoxicated state, he dreamed of being with Serenity without any restraints. Darling, let's discuss this tomorrow. It's late, and we might wake our daughter if we make too much noise. Mrs. Lowe advised her husband, preventing him from kicking the door again. Sean seems to be in a bad mood, and he might have been drinking in his room. If he gets too drunk, he won't hear any banging on the door, she added. Lately, Sean had been drowning his sorrows in alcohol, causing him to perform poorly at work and make mistakes. Mr. Lowe was furious but was persuaded to return to their bedroom. She then asked him if they should keep Zachary and Serenity's marriage a secret, as Zachary hadn't gone public with it yet. Mr. Lowe explained that Zachary had told them about the secret marriage and they shouldn't mention it to others to avoid any further difficulties with York Corporation. He believed that Sean was the reason for the sudden halt in cooperation. He must have had feelings for Serenity all along. He didn't confess before her shotgun marriage but did so afterward and kept bothering her. What was the point of that? Mr. Lowe questioned. Mrs. Lowe agreed, saying that she didn't approve of Sean and Serenity being a couple, as she had different expectations for her son's future wife. She believed Sean should marry a young lady from an illustrious family, someone who could help him financially. Mr. Lowe acknowledged that Serenity might be Sean's first love, but they couldn't let him continue this way. He feared that if Sean kept bothering Serenity, it would lead to disastrous consequences with Zachary. Mrs. Lowe asked where they should send Sean to help him get over his feelings for Serenity. Mr. Lowe suggested they should make him leave Wiltspoon and stay far away from her to avoid any potential conflicts with Zachary. Mrs. Lowe thanked her stars that she had treated Serenity well, as it might have saved them from a worse situation with Zachary. After New Year's, we'll send him to work at our Havenmill branch for a few years to gain experience. We'll bring him back here and provide him with additional training for another 2 years. If he proves capable, I'll let him take over Lowe Enterprise. However, if he can't move on and isn't fit for the responsibility, we have to choose a new successor for the future of the Lowe family. Mr. Lowe was hopeful that his son would become the successor to Lowe Enterprise, but he knew it depended on Sean's abilities. If Sean valued love more than his future, they would have to consider other candidates among their numerous nieces and nephews. Mrs. Lowe suggested sending Sean away to Havenmill on January 4th and cutting off his allowance. They planned to reveal Serenity's relationship with Zachary on January 3rd, hoping it would lead Sean to give up and accept the transfer. Mr. Lowe agreed to the plan and decided to start Sean at the bottom ranks of the Havenmill branch while closely monitoring his progress. They would freeze his credit cards and provide him with a new bank card linked to his wages in Havenmill. Meanwhile, Serenity had a peaceful sleep with Zachary beside her. She dreamt of enjoying a sumptuous meal but couldn't grab 2 chicken thighs to bring home for Zachary. The next day, she woke up, teased Zachary about the dream, and went to buy chicken thighs to reward him for breakfast. As she got ready to visit Whitmore Mansion, she found Zachary still asleep and wondered what he had been up to last night. Serenity then prepared breakfast, waiting for Zachary to wake up. Zachary was still asleep when Serenity finished preparing breakfast. She checked his breathing and forehead, making sure he's alright. Wondering why he was sleeping so much, she decided to wait for him to wake up before leaving for Whitmore Mansion. While she was getting ready, Liberty called to say she had gifts for them but decided not to visit due to the cold weather. Serenity suggested sending them Apple Cash instead, to which Liberty agreed. When Zachary woke up, he explained that he didn't go anywhere last night, enjoying a relaxing sleep with Serenity. He suggested she bring more clothes since they didn't need to pack any for him. Serenity realized she had packed too many clothes for Zachary, and he reassured her that they had everything they needed at the mansion. Go freshen up. Breakfast is ready. Once you're done, and we've had breakfast, we can leave. You mentioned it's quite far, so we should head out a bit earlier. Give me a kiss, Zachary said. Why should I give you a kiss? Can't you give me one? Serenity replied playfully. Zachary laughed and leaned down to kiss her, but she playfully covered his lips with her hand. Kiss me only after you've brushed your teeth, she said, pushing him away as she zipped up the luggage. Zachary was left speechless by his wife's refusal. And while you're at it, remember to shave your scruff off so you don't poke people with it, Serenity added with a smile before leaving the room. After Zachary had taken care of himself, he called out for Serenity, I'm coming, honey. Once he was ready, he requested a kiss from her, and she obliged. Why are there 2 chicken thighs today? Zachary asked as they sat down to eat. Serenity explained, last night, I dreamt someone treated me to a meal with delicious food. I ate all night until there were 2 big chicken thighs left, which I couldn't manage to grab. Even though I knew it was just a dream, I still wanted to give you 2 chicken thighs to eat." Zachary was amused by her dream and her love for food. As they ate, Serenity asked about his whereabouts the previous night, and Zachary mentioned having a drink with Mr. Buchan but refrained from telling her to avoid any nagging. She then shared her nightmare, which shocked Zachary. He assured her that it was just a dream, and she replied, "You know what they say, your dreams reflect your thoughts." While munching on a piece of chicken, Serenity playfully chided Zachary for not telling her about Mr. Buchan asking him out for drinks, which led to her having nightmares. Zachary admitted his mistake and promised to bring her along next time to prevent any issues. Once their breakfast was done, the couple made sure they had everything packed before heading out. They first dropped off their 3 pets and the car keys at Liberty's place, who also gave them Christmas presents. Driving to the Yorks' old residence, Whitmore Mansion, Serenity was in awe of its historical and grand appearance. Zachary joked that he would be a rich heir if he were born in that era, but he cherished the present time since it allowed him to meet Serenity. They explored the mansion together, and Serenity expressed her admiration for the place's history and beauty. During their vacation, they enjoyed each other's company and made cherished memories. Zachary's relatives felt a bit overwhelmed by the couple's affectionate display and returned to the city promptly after the holidays ended. Grandma May hoped the young couple's love would inspire her grandsons to consider marriage, but they instead chose to run away. She playfully asked Serenity to set up her brothers-in-law on dates, but Serenity believed they would find the right person in due time and didn't want to rush them into marriage. "I'm not getting any younger. I hope my grandsons will start their own families before I pass away." Grandma May expressed her wish and decided to find potential wives for her remaining grandsons. She planned to assign the boys to pursue the girls she chose for them, and attending her birthday celebration in August was contingent on completing this task. While Serenity blushed at the mention of a great-granddaughter, she assured Grandma May that she was not pregnant, as Aunt Flo had just visited. After the vacation at the old residence, Zachary and Serenity returned to Wiltspoon, where they spent the remaining days exploring the city without worrying about being recognized. Many people observed the affectionate couple, with some even capturing pictures of them together. As the post-holiday blues settled in, Valentine's Day approached, but Serenity was focused on preparing for the new school term. Meanwhile, Zachary was interviewed by the media, which was keen on uncovering his love story with his wife. People recognized Serenity's face from an old picture, but since the couple had kept their relationship private, no one dared to reveal her identity. The paparazzi tried to gather information about her, but the efforts were met with difficulty due to the secrecy maintained by those who knew the truth. Despite the challenges in keeping the secret, everyone around Zachary respected his desire for privacy, including Mrs. Lowe, who avoided meeting Serenity to avoid any slip-ups. Zachary had a tender expression as he spoke about his wife, which surprised the press. They could see the affectionate side of Mr. York when he was with his wife, a stark contrast to his usual aloof demeanor. He proudly revealed his wife's name as Serenity Hunt, a 26-year-old woman who he considered royalty in the York family. The reporters were intrigued, and one of them recalled that name from a viral incident on Twitter where Serenity and her sister were labeled ungrateful granddaughters. Zachary defended his wife, explaining that the Hunts had treated Serenity and her sister unfairly after their parents' death, leaving them as young children with no family support. The reporter sympathized with Serenity and praised her for enduring such hardship. The media also asked about Mrs. Stone, Serenity's aunt, who had hosted a high-profile event to introduce her nieces to Wiltspoon's elite. Zachary clarified that he couldn't attend the event due to a prior business trip and falling ill during that time. Serenity chose to take care of him instead of attending the event, showing her dedication as a wife. The male reporter acknowledged Zachary's luck in having such a devoted wife, and it became evident why he was known for spoiling her. "I consider myself a lucky man too." Zachary's stern countenance softened, revealing a tender and happy smile. He recalled how Serenity had taken a night flight to care for him when he was sick, and he appreciated the love she showed him during that time. When asked about marrying Serenity at first sight, Zachary openly admitted to it. He explained that they were in a rush to get married because of his Nana's health, but he now felt grateful for the decision as it led him to a wonderful woman like Serenity. The press was surprised by this revelation, as they had never expected Mr. York to rush into marriage. They speculated whether he was now ready to announce his marriage to the public, sparking excitement among the reporters. Zachary humorously mentioned that he couldn't predict the future and joked about wanting a daughter as their firstborn. When asked about his Valentine's Day plans, he casually listed extravagant gifts, including 30 jewelry sets, a villa, and a new car. The media was astonished by his generosity, realizing that such gifts were beyond what the average person could afford. The female reporter expressed envy over Serenity's luck in marrying into the wealthy York family, emphasizing how fortunate she was to have such a loving and generous husband. When asked about the significance of 30 jewelry sets that he had gifted Serenity, he revealed a sweet gesture behind it. He explained that there were 30 days in a month, and with 30 jewelry sets, Serenity could wear a different one each day for a whole month. The extravagant lifestyle of the rich was beyond the understanding of ordinary people, and the reporters couldn't help but envy Serenity for being in such a position. As the questions delved into the dynamics of his relationship with the Stone Group, Zachary maintained his composure. He acknowledged that Mrs. Stone was his wife's aunt, but he made it clear that their family ties did not impact their business decisions. He was not willing to compromise in the business world, despite Serenity and Elisa being cousins. He emphasized that he was fully committed to Serenity and had eyes only for her, even though Elisa had once declared her love for him. He reaffirmed his love for Serenity and their promise to stay together forever, never to be separated. Regarding his relationship with the Stones, Zachary revealed that they were currently on vacation, which was why he had not visited them. The press had been curious about how the Stones would react when they found out about Zachary and Serenity's marriage, especially given Elisa's previous feelings for him. Speculation arose about whether Elisa would feel insulted or defeated upon learning about their relationship. Throughout the interview, Zachary remained candid and revealed aspects of his life that the media had not anticipated. When asked about their daily life, he disclosed that they shared household chores equally, including grocery shopping at the farmers market. This revelation surprised the reporters, as it challenged their preconceived notions about the habits of the wealthy elite. Zachary's willingness to participate in ordinary tasks like grocery shopping showed how much Serenity had influenced him and changed his perspective on life. When asked about the cooking responsibilities, if it was the wife who handled the task, Mr. York's response clarified that whoever is available will take on the cooking duties. He mentioned that if he cooks, Serenity would take care of tidying up the house, emphasizing that they both share the household chores equally. They were surprised and asked if Mr. York really cooks. Zachary responded with a question, challenging the reporter's surprise at him being a cook. He mentioned that cooking skills were not limited to gender in his family and boasted that one of his brothers could even outshine the Wiltspoon Hotel's chef. The reporters couldn't help but express envy over Serenity's luck, but Zachary countered that he felt even luckier because his wife was an excellent cook who always prepared his favorite dishes. As the interview wrapped up, Zachary requested that the reporters not bother his wife, emphasizing that Serenity preferred a quiet and mundane life. The reporters promised not to intrude on her without permission, resorting to discreetly snapping photos if necessary. Zachary's security detail escorted the reporters out, and after the interview, he called his best friend, Josh. Josh was surprised to hear about the interview and playfully chided Zachary for not coming back to work. He had been handling things in Zachary's absence and was eager to leave work early to prepare for Valentine's Day with Jasmine. When Zachary explained that the interview was about his marriage and that he intended to tell Serenity about his true identity, Josh couldn't help but smile at his friend's romantic gesture. Zachary revealed that the suggestion for the interview came from Ben and acknowledged that he wasn't sure how Serenity would react. He braced himself for her reaction and playfully remarked that if things didn't go well, he could blame Ben for the suggestion. With the interview behind him, Zachary left to face his wife's response, while Josh decided to delegate work to Callum so he could deliver flowers to Jasmine and celebrate Valentine's Day together. Zachary felt speechless and sought encouragement from Josh regarding telling Serenity the truth about his identity. Josh assured him of his unwavering support and humorously reminded Zachary that he would be there for him even if things went wrong. Josh playfully teased Zachary about the possibility of facing Serenity's anger and potentially signing divorce papers, but also offered his companionship in case things went awry. Josh advised Zachary to face the situation head-on and be prepared for any outcome, reminding him that they would have each other's backs regardless. He playfully suggested that he would have popcorn ready to witness the drama if things didn't go well. Josh also reminded Zachary about Valentine's Day, advising him to buy Serenity a bouquet of flowers as a simple gesture of love. Zachary, however, surprised Josh with the extravagant gifts he had already prepared for Serenity, including thousands of roses, 30 jewelry sets, a villa, a car, and more. Despite Josh's teasing and hanging up the phone in jest, Zachary remained undeterred, believing he could do better with the gifts and hoping they would help soften Serenity's reaction to the truth. As Zachary busied himself with preparations, Serenity finished tidying up the shop and discussed plans for the upcoming school term with Jasmine. They needed to order study materials from the supplier in advance, aware that immediate delivery might not be possible. It would take a couple of days for Serenity and Jasmine's order of study materials to be processed. They needed to prepare in advance before the school term began to ensure they had all required materials in stock. Jasmine had already made a list, and they planned to phone the supplier for delivery. Knowing that the first few days of school would be busy with students purchasing their materials, Serenity asked her sister and Mrs. Lane to help out at the shop. Meanwhile, Liberty was arranging for her restaurant's remodeling, which would begin soon after the students returned to school. Liberty had promised to lend a hand at the shop during that period. As Serenity began working on the computer, Jasmine noticed her playing the song Miss You on Spotify. Jasmine asked if Zachary had planned anything for the day, hinting at Valentine's Day. Serenity didn't initially realize it was Valentine's Day but later acknowledged it, expressing that she and Zachary considered every day special when their relationship was in a good place. Jasmine admitted that Mr. Buchan hadn't done anything for Valentine's Day either, and she playfully suggested that both Zachary and Mr. Buchan seemed similar in their disregard for such occasions. While Serenity checked the news online, Jasmine urged her to click on a pop-up gossip piece about the heir of the York family. Jasmine was eager to find out more about Zachary's beloved wife and was intrigued to learn about her through the gossip news. Jasmine was fascinated by the identity of Mrs. York and how she had transformed the once cold and indifferent Mr. York into an affectionate husband. She had heard rumors about how much Mr. York adored his wife and had even asked Josh, Mr. York's most trusted man, to introduce her to Mrs. York. However, Josh declined, stating that Mrs. York's identity would only be revealed when Mr. York was ready to make a public announcement. Finally, some news about Mr. York's marriage was out, and Jasmine couldn't resist clicking on the gossip piece to find out more. Serenity was uninterested, believing that Mrs. York's identity had no relevance to their lives, and they couldn't learn any secrets about taming husbands from her, as Zachary spoiled her silly. Jasmine couldn't believe her eyes as she looked at the interview. She quickly leaned in to get a better view of the screen, rubbing her eyes in disbelief. "Saren, am I seeing things? Is that really Mr. York in the interview? Why is he your Mr. York?" she asked, pointing at the caption on the screen. Serenity's heart raced as she watched the interview, her mind trying to process the shocking revelation. She had always wondered about Zachary's connection to the wealthy York family, and he had repeatedly assured her that the only thing they shared was the same last name. But now, it was clear that Mr. York and Zachary were one and the same. "He lied to me," Serenity whispered, her voice trembling with mixed emotions. "All this time, he pretended to be someone else, and I had no idea." Jasmine could see the hurt and confusion in her best friend's eyes. "I can't believe it either. He had us all fooled," she said, trying to offer some comfort. As they continued watching the interview, Serenity was reminded of a dream she had before their wedding. In the dream, she was walking down the aisle to marry Zachary when Elisa, in a fit of anger, appeared to stop the wedding. Elisa had warned her that Zachary was a liar who had deceived her. At the time, Serenity had brushed it off as a mere dream, but now, she couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to it. "Elisa," Serenity whispered, her thoughts racing. Elisa was in love with Mr. York, and Mr. York is Zachary. It all makes sense now. The revelation about Zachary being Mr. York had left Serenity in shock. Her mind was racing, trying to process the fact that her own husband had deceived her. She remembered all the moments they had shared together, the intimate times they had, and it hurt to think that he had kept such a significant secret from her. Jasmine was deeply concerned about Serenity's reaction. She tried to shake her friend out of her trance, but Serenity remained unresponsive, staring at the computer screen in disbelief. Seeing her friend in distress, Jasmine decided to call Liberty for help. However, she couldn't remember Liberty's new phone number, and her flustered state made it even harder to find it. She tried her best to get through to Liberty, knowing that she could offer some support to Serenity. Meanwhile, Liberty was at her restaurant when she received Jasmine's call. She assumed that Jasmine was calling to invite her for lunch, but when she heard about Serenity's state, she immediately rushed to her sister's aid. Not paying attention to the car she stopped, Liberty climbed into the backseat with her son Sonny and asked the driver, Duncan, to take her to Wiltspoon School where Serenity was. Duncan was surprised to see Liberty, and she was equally surprised to find him as the driver. With his playful demeanor, teased Liberty about getting into a stranger's car without realizing it's him. Despite the banter, he noticed that Liberty had lost weight during the holidays and looked more attractive. Liberty, feeling guilty for taking up Duncan's time, offered to find another cab, but he insisted on driving her to the school and taking care of locking up her restaurant. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channels, the Voice channel, and watch my original creations, as well as my new channel La Novela showcasing the forbidden love story. Please don't forget to hit all from the notification bell, so you will get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Thank you.